Welcome back to Lobotomy Corporation. I'm Grillmastah, and today we have Snow White's apple. Snow White's apple appears to be a humanoid creature that has vine arms and an apple for a head. It has a long dress hanging down off of its shoulders. This employee here, Chloe, has the armor and weapon of Snow White's apple. She has 3, mostly around the board. Prudence is up to 4 though. Instinct is common, insight is common, repression is high, and attachment is very low. The mirror kept silent, but the witch heard the answer. Chloe can see the branches covering the containment unit. If you look closely, you can see that the branches are withered. Snow White's apple was by itself for a long time. Around Snow White's apple, the remains of the bugs and birds that died after eating Snow White's apple are scattered about. Snow White's apple grew in jealousy, wrath, and loneliness. They all dried to a crisp that a single touch would reduce them to dust. They looked too horrible to be called plants. Snow White's apple only has a quality counter of 1, so ideally, you want to make sure that you're sending somebody in who's good and has high stats, because otherwise, it will escape. When it escapes, it will move to a random point in your containment facility and begin to spread roots across the entire area. Anybody hit with the roots will be hit with significant damage. It does black damage. It is endured 0.5 to red. It is immune to black. It is normal to white damage at 1, and weak to pale at 1.5. And you can see, when an employee is struck, they grow roots out of their mouth. Once the whole hallway fills up with roots, she will disappear and go to another hallway. One good solution to use against her is people who has far away damage. Up close, will get torn apart by standing in the vines and also by just simply getting hit by her. Once she is defeated, she will go back to the containment unit. And Aleph gear is what I use to destroy her, and it goes pretty quickly. Story of Snow White's apple. When the prince kissed the princess, she coughed up the apple bits stuck inside her throat. The dwarves cried out in happiness. Snow White and the prince walked through a path covered in flowers and headed to their kingdom, and everyone lived happily ever after. And there was an apple, created from a witch's wrath and curse. It was a part of herself. The apple that dropped from Snow White's hand after a single bite can never be happy. The apple, full of hatred towards the princess and feeling lonely, waited for the day when it would return to the earth. We don't know if it's the enchantment or the wrath that is bending the laws of nature. Even after plenty of time has passed for it to rot and allow its seed to bear fruit, the apple did not rot. Half of it crushed and the other half has bug holes. The carcasses of the birds and bugs piled up near the apple. The apple pondered if its existence in the midst of the dead, and one day a branch grew from it. The leaves and branches were already dead, but it continued to grow. Finally, one afternoon, when the apple gained the power of mobility, it thought of the princess and the prince who were happy. Snow White had been sleeping for a long time, but a prince came and woke her up. The apple, now a princess in its own right, began her journey to find her own prince. Excerpt from the Hidden Stories of Fairy Tales, author unknown. Management details 1. When the work result was normal, quality counter was reduced with a normal probability. Management tip 2. When the work result was bad, quality counter was reduced with a high probability. Management tip 3. After escaping from the containment unit, Snow White's apple has spread its roots in the ground, spewing up branches in the corridor. The branches of Snow White's apple slowed down the employees, hampering their movement. Management tip 4. After the corridor was filled with branches, Snow White's apple moved to a different place to make more branches. Snow White's apple had been suppressed and returned to its containment unit, but its branches didn't disappear until the next day. Instinct is very low on 1 and 2, and common on 3 through 5. Insight is very low on 1, low on 2, common on 3 through 5. Attachment is very low all across the board. Repression is low on 1 and 2, common on 3 and 4, and high on 5, so repression is by far the best to send them in on. The weapon is black damage, and I have used this a lot, but it was because this was the strongest I had at the time. It is pretty useful though, and the armor is 0.8 endured to red, 1.2 weak to white, 0.6 endured to black, and 1.5 weak to pale. So it does have the 0.5, and these two are not too shabby, but it is mean, there's haze that have about the same. The gift is 6%, SP plus 6, minimum and maximum attack power plus 5 when the weapon from the same abnormality is equipped. So if you have this gift and the weapon, you actually do more damage with the weapon. Quell counter is only 1, and so it does escape if you don't have the best employees going in there. 0.5 Endurer to red, immune to black, 1 normal to white, and 1.5 weak to pale. And that has been Snow White's Apple. Until next time.